Um, Hello? Is this thing, is it on? I hope it is. Hi, everyone. This is something different. It's me live streaming some code. And that's something entirely different than what I'm used to on this channel. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm doing something today that I've pledged myself never to do. I wrote a blog post a couple of years ago where I explained why it's a very bad idea to write your own framework. And today I'm going to write my own framework. It's not going to be just today. It's gonna take a couple of live streams probably. And I hope that, well, you are excited with what we're doing here and you pitch in and you share your ideas and we can have some kind of interaction. Basically, that's what I'm hoping for here. And yeah, I think it's an interesting exercise to write a framework because you're touching a lot of layers in PHP that we often take for granted. Now, full disclosure, I might use this framework myself for some projects. You know, I often have to prototype small projects and it might be a good fit for that. It's going to be a micro framework. Do not use this in any production like projects for real life clients. Do not do that. Never do that. Use Laravel or Symfony and or some of the other frameworks, but I would advise Laravel or Symfony. So I just wanted to make that clear. I have some code prepared. I wrote quite a lot of code over the weekend actually for this framework, but we're going to start from scratch again and we're going to see where it leads us, and you can pitch in as well. So that will be pretty nice. You can leave comments, but I'm not watching them like continuously. I'll often check them and then I can reply if you have any questions. Let me know if everything's okay with the stream. I've got no clue. I'm a total noob, but I will assume everything is all right. And I feel like this is like a totally noob streamer thing to say every time you go live. Is everything okay? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It is what it is. Okay, this framework. This is the project I have set up. And it's completely empty, and we're going to basically build it from scratch. We're not going to use any PSR, we're not going to use any existing packages because that's the interesting exercise, right? Quick run through over the project structure here. I've got my source folder, which is going to contain the framework code. I've got my tests folder, which is going to be the test folder for my framework code, and then the app folder. It's basically an existing project built in this framework. By the way, the framework is called Tempest and it has this logo. I like it. And there is actually a story behind this this name, but we might dive into that later on stream. Like a Tempest project will live in this app directory, and we're actually going to use our tests to like reach into this project and test stuff. But we probably won't do all of that today because today is kind of laying the groundworks for our framework here. And let me check. Oh, hey, you're all here in chat. That's nice to see. I was distracted by chat. We're laying the groundworks today, basically. And one of the very cool elements of any framework is the dependency container. And that's what we're going to build from scratch first. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an interface, actually interfaces directory here. And basically everything that you can do with this framework will have an interface, and my goal is to have a very like shallow class hierarchy, final classes and interfaces and traits. That's basically it. If you've been following me on Twitter or if you have been watching some of my latest videos, you might know why I'm doing it this way. I've recently discovered that I really like this approach. So I'm just going to do it like that. Let's create a container interface. And it will probably need a couple of functions. Let's start with register, which is going to take a class name and a callable definition, and it will return itself. And we'll also need a get function, which takes a class name, and it will return an object, right? And for this function, we're going to write a couple of generic doc blocks here. Class name, because that way PHP Storm will be able to infer the class returned, the type of the class returned from this function, which is pretty nice. My microphone is a bit in the way of my keyboard, but it is what it is. So we take a class string here, which is like linked to this generic template type class name, and then we're going to return an instance of that class name, and basically that's enough to let PHP Storm know that this function, whatever class name you pass into it, you will get an object that is an instance of that class name. Yeah, people are telling me it looks like it looks a bit like a Thunderbird. Yeah, I know. Well, I knew after I made it. Someone told me on Twitter as well. It is what it is. I really don't think you can create a thumbnail that's unique anymore. So you'll always find something that it looks like. So is this PHP 8.2? It sure is. And is there something wrong with Lara? Someone asks. No, nothing is wrong with Laravel. We're doing this as an exercise to learn some things, right? Okay, we have our interface here. And let's now create an implementation for it. And this is just a convention. I'm going to call all classes that implement one of these interfaces like generic container. If you know a better name, you can let me know. I'm not really sure what's a good name here, but I want to avoid like calling this container interface, because this is the class you're going to use, and there are going to be some more interfaces, and you're going to use these interfaces to basically ask dependencies from the container. So I want them to be as short as possible. So I kind of do it the other way around. And I hope that's okay. Let's take a look. We're going to implement our container, and I'm also going to create a test for it. Let's start with an array of definitions, and I'm actually going to get rid of the read-only here, because we'll have to append items to our array here. Okay, the register, by the way, I have my source code down here, so I know what I'm doing. So whenever we register a definition, we're basically just going to save it to that array over there. Let's write a test. I'm just going to call it test container. I don't really care. So let's say container is new generic container for now, and we're going to register a definition. We'll also need a class for that. So let's say class container A. Basically, that's it. Let's say container A, and we'll pass it a callable new container A. So this is the very bare bones. We're going to expand on it a lot more, of course. I always have like the need to check my comments, but it's kind of distracting as well. No, I'm going to stay focused until our container with auto wiring works. I'm not going to read the comments anymore. That's what I want to do. Okay, so container register, and next thing we want to do is get it from container. Get it from it, and we want to assert instance container A. So of course this test will fail. I'll need to run composer up. Oh, and I also have, I need to remove this. This was like, I'm a little bit farther, like I've made a bit of progress on the main branch, and I forgot to remove that entry there. Okay, this is good. We're failing because, of course, we haven't implemented anything. So next error here is get should return something. Okay. Let's go back to a register function. We're going to say this definition class name equals definition. Basically, that's all we need here. And our get method. Let's just do the very naive approach for now and assume that all definitions are set. So definition equals definitions class name, and let's say return new definition. I wrote a typo. Rename definition like this. And let's see if our test works. Instantiation of a closure is not defined. Of course, I'm a noob. There we are. Okay, failed asserting that it is actually the thing I expect it to be. That's interesting. Let's take a look at our definition here that we have. It's a closure that's going to return something. Yeah. Let's see what's in our variable here, container A. Ah. You probably told me this in chat. You probably did. But I wasn't going to look at chat until we have auto wiring enabled, because this is kind of cumbersome to do. The power of a container is that it's able to auto wire dependencies. So without a definition here, it should be able to resolve this class, which of course isn't going to work. What we're going to do, we're going to add a private function here called auto wire. And let's take a look at my notes. Yeah, okay, it takes the class name and it will also return an object. And basically what AutoWire will have to do is, well, it could return new class name like this, okay? So if the definition for this class name isn't set, which we're doing here, we could use AutoWire instead. A reference to it, and let's see if it works. Too few arguments passed, of course. We should do it like this. Yeah. Okay, so this is a very naive approach, because now when we have, let's say, a constructor here, class container B, and so A has a dependency on B, private container B. So we run our test again, and of course it breaks. So now we want our container to be smart enough to like infer which objects are required here, which dependencies are required by container A, and like recursively resolve those dependencies, right? Okay, let's do that. Let's create a reflection class here. Reflection class on class name. And from that reflection class, we can infer its the parameters that its constructor requires. So let's write parameters, and this is going to be an array of something, and we're going to pass it into like the constructor of the class name. So basically, we want to resolve all those dependencies. Let's use array map, which is going to take a function, and we're going to map over reflection get constructor, which is optional because not all classes have a constructor. So let's use the nullable thing here. Get parameters, and if nothing's here, we'll pass an empty array. There's no constructor, and so it's basically we don't need to pass in anything, and our AutoWire will work without resolving any of its dependencies. Let's say in our function here, we get a reflection parameter, which has a type, which we can use to get parameter, get type, get name. Okay, our test works. Nice. We have auto wiring working. I'm skipping a lot of like exception handlings and double checks here because I'm assuming we'll always have types available. We can still add exceptions later, but it's interesting because now I can look at chat basically. Let's take a look. Okay. Like whenever someone says like they have problems with video quality, I'm kind of stressing out, but I hope it's only one person. Oh yeah, someone is asking for the GitHub repository. That's going. I'm going to open source it, but only after like we have something substantial to show. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look here. Are there really 44 people watching? It's kind of crazy. Hi everyone. So we have auto wiring pretty much done. A very naive approach of auto wiring, but it kind of shows how little code goes into something like this to have actually a working solution here. So that's pretty nice. Let's take a look at what else we want to add here, because one of the things containers often do is allow for singletons. And singletons, they will make it so that the container will only create a specific class once and then reuse it every time whenever it's requested again in other places, which is kind of an important thing for a framework, because you do not want to like reinitialize everything again and again. One interesting thing we're going to do with Tempest here is that config files are going to be dependencies in the container. There aren't going to be like YAML files or XML files. These are going to be classes with named arguments, and you can just like construct them however you want in separate files, and then we're going to load them in, and they're going to be singleton dependencies in the container. And whenever you need some config values in whatever kind of place within the framework or within your project, you can just add them to the constructor, which will auto wire everything together, and the container will inject config objects wherever you need them, basically. So let's take a look at singletons here. Test singleton. And in order to do that, we'll probably have to create like a singleton class. And we want to ensure that this class is only constructed once, right? So very easy. Let's say static count is 0. And whenever this class is constructed, we're going to increment this count by 1. Okay. So what we can do, let's use our container again. And well, basically I could have copied everything. Let's say a singleton class over here, singleton class over there, instance, perfect. And we want to assert that its count is 1 at the moment, count. And then we want to resolve it again and assert that the count still is 1. And this test fails, as you can see, because we've created a new instance when we called this get method. So how are we going to solve this? Well, in case of singletons, we'll have to like signify to the container that we actually want a singleton. So we'll have to add a method here. Let's go back to our interface actually. And probably should add it here. Singleton, which is a string class name callable definition. That's basically the same. Let's move this out of the way. Like so. And let's add this method here. Okay, and for this to work, we'll have to, oh yeah, we're going to add another array here, singletons, like this. Now, our singleton definition basically is going to wrap the original definition that we use. Let's take a look. Definitions, class name. So basically, this is the same part as when we're registering things, but we're going to say function over here. We're going to use definition and class name probably in the right order. Okay. So we're going to create an instance here. Instance definition. We're always passing the container to our definition. But when we created the instance, we're going to add it to the singletons array, right? Then we're going to return it. Okay, basically this is what we need. There's one more change, of course, we'll have to do, and that's when we're resolving stuff from the container. We want to first check whether there's a singleton already available for this class name. So basically this, let's rerun our test, and I have an error here. Yeah, of course. Singleton class returns a new singleton class like this, and let's rerun our test. Object of type is not callable. Oh, I have a mistake somewhere. Oh yeah, of course, because we're calling our definition here. We should rewrite it like this. So if instance, let's wrap it in braces, use null coalescing. So if the instance exists, we'll return instance basically, and that works. Nice. Oh yeah, you can also use assert same. I know, and I always forget. I don't know. I think I used PHP unit when it didn't have assert same, or when it didn't work the same way, or, and I'm so used to using assert equals. But you're absolutely right. Okay. Oh, Tim makes a good point here. I find that using static properties is a bit of an anti-pattern, as they are not reset between individual tests. That's right, and it doesn't really matter at this point, but if I run into problems here, I'll refactoring it. And this is why I also write these classes, these small test classes within the same file. I do not want them to be accessed from anywhere else. So I think we're still okay on this front. Okay, so we have our container with auto wiring and singletons. Let's take a look at what else we want. Like my real framework code has already quite a lot of extra checks and stuff like that. I wanna go through that later in the stream, but I actually think, if I'm not mistaken, we have everything in place now to create the second core part of any MVC framework, and that is let's go over here. That is the router. Oh, I didn't make an interface. Interface router. Okay, let me gather my notes here. Router, and like this. Okay, so a router, which is the entry point of any MVC framework. There's an HTTP request. It comes into your application, and it should be routed to the right controller, right? Which is kind of one of the core principles of MVC. So what we want to do is this router will have to be able to dispatch a request. We'll still have to make that request, and it will return a response. We don't have those classes yet, so let's make them. Let's not import them, let's create them. I'm going to make them interface as well, and response is I don't know why I cannot change this. Interface response. Let's take a look at request first. Yeah, request has like a couple of basic methods, and there's a good reason I made this an interface, by the way. But that's going to be for a later point in this live stream or another one. Get method, and that means we'll also have to create, let's call this HTTP method, which is an enum, like this case get, probably do it uppercase, and post. I'm only going to write get and post for now. We'll worry about other methods later. And in essence, your browser only sends get and post requests unless something has changed in the last couple of years. I actually don't know. I'm writing this in the response class. Probably you've told me in chat already as well. Like get URI, which is a string. We're not going to overcomplicate things. Get body, which is going to be an array. And well, let's just keep it at this for now. And then we're going to make an implementation here. Again, generic request. It implements request, and it has, let's just do it like this. So private method, private string URI, and what was the last one? Private array body, like this. And then I'm going to generate getters for all of these. And okay, that's good. This is our request. Let's do the same for our response. I have to actually check this response over here. Response is going to have, for now, just two basic things. Oh, that was correct. Get status, which is another enum. Status. And it's a string as well. And let's also implement only two codes for now. 404. So ideally you could just have this, but that's not allowed with enum. So I have to write it like this, which I find annoying, but it is what it is. So a response has a status, and it also has a body for now. Get body string. Okay. Let's make a generic response. Implement response, and we're going to do the same thing over here. Private status. So what I would really like to see in PHP, by the way, is that you can have interfaces that provide properties, because then I could just make these public read-only, and I wouldn't have to write getters. But now there's the only way to ensure that an interface like does something is via methods. So you have to write all this boilerplate code, which I find a little bit annoying. Anyway, okay, let's take a look at comments again. Why not use PSR 7? Because we're learning here and we want to like reinvent the wheel everywhere. It's for learning purposes. Like this. Okay. So we have our response and request, and our router is going to dispatch a request and return a response. And what the router is going to do is to figure out which controller it should use, right? And routing in this framework is going to be a little different than what you're used to, because I really don't want to be bothered or bother developers with creating config files, or at least as little as possible. So routing is going to use attributes, basically. Let's take a look here. Let's say we have a route attribute. Route attribute, of course. And it's going to take 2 arguments for now. Public string URI and public method. Okay. I'm going to remove final here, which I don't do very often, but I do want some like subclasses, sub attributes of this route attribute, because it makes it just a little bit easier, right? So route, and we're going to say construct, and this one is only going to take a URI, and it's going to use method get. I'm going to do the same for posts for now, like so. Okay, and so our controllers, let's actually go to our app function folder here. Let's say controllers, like home controller. Let's say index here. We do it like this, URI. So this is what routing is going to look like in this framework. And I know there are some downsides to using attributes, but there's actually something pretty cool we can do with this when it comes to route grouping and stuff like that. But that's a topic for another day. This response, and controller is going to return a response. And let's say it returns new response, generic response, we call it, of course. Status 200 and a body of hi, no test. Okay, like this. It's time to implement our router, I think. Let's say generic router implements router. And what we're going to need to do is to match the URI. So let's say it's /home. We'll need to find out which controller action it should route to, right? And this is easy because it's just a string, but we can also have stuff like variables in our routes. So it becomes a rather complicated topic very soon. The first thing I want to do though is add a class here, over here. Remember how I was talking about route config? Well, we're going to make it right now. For now, we're not going to discover our controllers or whatever classes. We're just going to predefine them because we have to scan for controllers somewhere to define, to find out which routes we're going to use. We're going to have a config for that for now. So controllers is an array, and let me show you. I'll have to remove read only here. No, I don't. It's okay. Let me actually show you what we can do now. Let's make a test here, like a base test case, which extends from test case test extends. Yes, I should remove this, of course. Okay, and in our setup here, we're going to create a container. So this container, new generic container. And let's also add this property over here. And in that container, I'm going to singleton register our route config. And it's going to return a new router config with controllers. And I'm just going to list a home controller here for now. Like that. So back to comments here. Will you rebuild your blog on Tempest instead of Stitcher? I actually plan on doing that. Yeah. So I'm working towards a goal here. And is this the first episode? It is. Yes. And we're still at the very, very beginnings of the framework we're building here. And it's live and completely unfiltered. I hope it's still going okay. It's actually getting pretty hot in here, so I don't know if you can see that. It's the weather over here. The summer has been it has been pretty hot, but I guess it's the same everywhere for everyone. So I'm not going to complain. But you don't want, it doesn't matter. So we've registered our router config in our container, which means that within our generic router, as long as we resolve it via the container, we can just request router config here, and it will be auto-wired for us. So when we write our test here, test router, I'm not really into writing cohesive test names at this point. We can say router, this container, I should have made it protected. And I should extend, of course, from the right test case. Is it the right one? Yeah. Container get router like this. But of course, we're getting the interface here. So we'll also have to register our a definition for our router itself into the container, a singleton definition. So whenever you ask for the router interface, the container should return a new. Actually, it should return container. It should contain returner get. I can't speak anymore. Return container get generic router like this. Some code cleanup here. Okay, so whenever we request an instance of router, we're going to use the container to return an instance of generic router, and we're using the container here to get it from itself, because that way we get auto wiring and we don't have to worry about like manually instantiating it. Let's take a look if that actually works, because I actually have no namespace here. It's kind of anticlimactic. Tests Tempest and the wrong test. Let's import. I imported the wrong one. Okay, that seems to be better. Okay, and we get an instance of generic router with our router config, which has an array of controllers we want to scan for. Okay, good. So let's go back to our router here. Whenever a request is dispatched on the router, we want to resolve the right controller, controller class and controller action or method that matches that URI, right? And we know that it matches because we have annotations here that are linked to a specific method. Okay, and let's write our test case here. So response is router actually, I think I need to type in on container here. Do I? Yeah. And it's kind of annoying that I don't have auto-completion here, which is an issue I ran into as well, and it was fixed by properly using the interface here, which isn't the case now, and I don't know why. I'm just going to write router dispatch. Okay, new request, and we'll have to search a generic request, of course. The method is going to be get, right? Method get, and the URI is going to be /home. Okay, and what's the error here? Required parameter body, but in this case we don't really want our body to be set. Okay, good. Response, I don't know, it's not going to return anything because our router isn't doing anything yet. Okay. Let's do it like this. Okay, so we'll need a couple of things. We have our router config here. We're going to have to loop over it and find the right methods, find the right controller, right? So this router config controller. We'll have to refactor this quite a lot later, but controller class. Okay. So I'm actually reading through my notes now because yes, no, get. Yeah, no, router. Yeah, so the thing is, like my notes, they're already a bit further down in the like thinking process, and my implementation is already quite different than what I'm going to write here. But that's okay. Let's just go with the basic approach. So we're going to create a reflection class. Reflection class over this controller class here, and then we're going to loop over its methods, right? For each reflection class get methods, and we're just going to get all methods for now as method, and then we'll have to detect whether a specific method that we're looping over has this route attribute, right? And we can do that by route attribute method get attributes. It's going to be this one, yeah, and we're going to say reflection attribute is instance of, so it will match all attributes that extend from this one as well, which is important. And we're going to take the first one if it exists, and if there's no route attribute, then we cannot really do anything with it, and we're going to continue our loop, continue our search. But if we have a route attribute here, let's actually run our test. Yeah, we have it. We want to check whether our method, the method over here, matches the one we're trying to resolve from our request, and whether the URI matches. So let's first do if I have to instantiate a route, the attribute as well, new instance, and I have to type into it route like this. Okay, so if route method, I should do it like this, isn't the same as request get method, we'll continue. So we're not interested in that. And now we'll have to determine whether the URI matches are the one specified here. And for now, I'm just going to use a very simple approach here, which isn't, we're going to have to improve on this quite a lot, because now we're just simply matching one on one and not really doing anything more substantial here, but that's okay. So let's assume our method and URI matches, then we have a match, and then we'll want to generate a response. So basically, we know which reflection class and which reflection method is handling this specific request. Now we'll have to we need to call it and return its response, right? So let's do a very naive approach here. So controller class, we already had that, and we're going to call the method, which is reflection method get name, like this. Will it work? Call to member function, index on string. Of course, we'll have to instantiate our controller class, and we're going to do that using the container, of course. So that means we have to inject the container here. This is one of the few places where you want to inject the container directly. I think, well, because, no, it works just fine. But that reminds me that we need to create a singleton in the container for the container itself. Makes sense, right? Container, this container. Because if we wouldn't create a singleton for our container class, we would reinstantiate a new container instance every time we get it, which means that all our singleton definitions aren't available. So container get controller class, controller like this. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, no errors, and we actually got a response from the controller, of course, that we made somewhere over here. So we should assert, this is a very high level test, but we should assert that we got this response, which isn't all that difficult, but let's use assert same here. So expected is status 200, response get status, and the body should, I don't remember what we wrote, test. Okay, and it passes. That's pretty nice. Okay, let's check over here. So I'm going through comments again. Scott asks, you work in what project? Do you mean which editor? That's PHP Storm that I'm using. Yalmer asks if I will add route caching, and that's definitely, we're definitely going to do that, but our router will need to have some refactoring to be done before being able to do that. Romain asks, it shouldn't be self-assert same? I don't think so. It seems to work pretty well. Okay, so one last thing I want to do today on this stream yet. How long have we been streaming? Can I see that somewhere? Oh yeah, 50 minutes. Okay. Can I do this in like 10 minutes? I'm not sure. I want to add support for route variables, right? So let's say show, let's say string name. It's going to return a response, which is going to return the name. So basically, what we want is, let's say, test name. We want to support something like this. Okay. Let's write a test first. By the way, do you appreciate how I do like test-driven development here? Router with variables. And let's copy over some of our code here. So test brand. Right. So basically, what should happen now is that the router should match this particular URI to this pattern, and then be able to match the parameter I gave it here, match it, and pass it into the controller method. Right, that's what needs to happen. In order to do that, we're going to need to write some regex, right? And we're going to have to change our check over here. So let's write a function matches. So string, so we have the route URI and request URI. And instead of returning a Boolean here, what I'm going to do, let me double check, is to return an optional array. Instead of matches, I'm going to call it resolve params. This should be improved a little bit in the future. But let me tell you what's going to happen here. If the route URI and request URI, if it matches, then we'll have to resolve the parameters as well. So we'll have to return an array, what's it called, name with Brent in this case, right? The thing is here, I could do it in 2 steps. I could first check whether it matches and then resolve the actual values, but it's going to be an additional regex call. And in something like routes dispatching, performance is quite critical. So you probably don't want to have too many regex calls. So I'm going to combine them into one, because you can do that with PHP's regex. And it saves a regex call, but it's going to be clear pretty soon, I think. So first of all, we have our route URI here, which is test name, which is some kind of pattern, but it's not a pattern that works with regex. And then we have our request URI, which is /test/Brent, and these two should match. So what we're going to do is transform this pattern to a proper regex pattern. I don't know if it's regex or regex, by the way, I'm using both of them. We're going to transform it so that it will actually be able to match our request URI. So it's going to be transformed to, let me double check. I wrote it down like this, I think. Yeah, it's going to match, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. Oh, regex, boy, oh boy. It's going to create, let's say, this pattern over here. Like so, I think. So, and this is a regex that matches this URI, but it would also match something like tests. I think it would. I actually should check that, but we'll have to transform this into this. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want developers to have to write regex, basically. That's the reasoning here. So we're actually going to have to do 2 regex calls already, because we'll have to transform this pattern to this one and then match it to our request URI. Okay? Okay. So let's say params is this resolve params, and then we have our route URI and our request get URI, like this. Okay. So now we're here. I think, yeah, this is good. Okay, let me just check the comments if anyone has like questions about this. Jelmer is writing a book in the comments. You're talking about assert same, that's okay. Regular expression regex. Yeah. And Daniel. Hi, Daniel. The love stream is happening. It definitely is. And we're almost, we're working on the last thing now, and then we're going to conclude, by the way. Yeah, so we're doing route matching with variables, basically. Okay, so the first step is we're going to transform our pattern to a proper regex pattern. Let's do it like this: preg match all, and you might think that I'm like a total regex pro here, but I'm just I'm just copying what I wrote before. So the route URI is going into tokens. Okay, a couple of things happening here. This is like the worst API design within PHP. So preg match all, it returns a result, and the result it returns, let's scroll here. Return. Int, false or null. Great design here. The number of full pattern matches, which might be 0, or false if an error occurred. Or null, I don't know when null returns. If an error occurred, or if there are no matches, so if not result, we'll return null, because that means that our URI doesn't match. Okay? But if there are matches, then the result of those matches will be in the tokens variable over here. And let's take a look at that already sucks. I have to debug. So what I'm going to do is going to comment out this for now, so that I'm only working with. Okay, so this is our input string, right? And this pattern should, in theory, match it, but it apparently doesn't, I guess. No, it doesn't. So now now we'll have to debug regex, right? Yeah, okay. So what I do, I'm a total regex noob. I go to regex 101. There is actually something to do this in PHP Storm, which I probably should know about, but I don't. Slash test. Hang on a second. Yeah, slash test slash name. Okay, why doesn't it match? Yeah. I know why it doesn't match. Stupid. You probably told me in chat. Okay, so our tokens are, we actually have a token here, which is good. So let's say, let's do it like this, because it's a nested array that comes from our regex call. Okay, so, but now we have our pattern here. No, we have our token. One token in this case, but it could be several, of course, because you can have several variables in the same in the same URI, by the way, like this. But let's keep it simple. So now we have to like build our matching regex pattern, basically, which is, I mean, I'm just going to invent something here as if I know what I'm doing. Like so. Like so. I'm going to explain everything here, by the way. But let me just write it down. Count tokens. Because it's easier if I can like show the output to you. Something like this. And then our pattern is our route URI. And then we'll have to end our, okay. Simple, right? Okay, so remember how I said that we have this route here, and we'll have to transform it into this regex pattern. So, and that's basically what we did here. First of all, I replaced all forward slashes with these because they are reserved tokens in regex. But you have to do this in PHP because it's a backslash and you have to escape it. Okay, so that's why I'm doing this replace. And then I'm going to replace all tokens that we found by basically this pattern over here. So yeah, I'm passing that into the like the search array, and you can do multiple searches and replaces with string replaced, which is why it's like this. And we're going to replace it basically with the same amount of tokens, basically this, okay? And we use the route URI as our subject, and it should match beginning and end. Yeah, basically that's it. I hope you you got all of that. It's always fun to do regex. Let's take a look. If we apply this pattern now to our request URI, so that's the second regex match. So matching regex, we do that to our request URI, and we put it into matches. Remember, that's that array here. So if the result is 0 in this case, we'll just return an empty array because it means that our pattern has matched, but there aren't any variables in this case, which is fine, and we'll just return an empty array. We're going to let's take a look at what's in our matches array right now, whether it works. It doesn't, because our result here is 0, I suppose. Yeah, of course, which means I have an error in this part over here. Let's take a quick look. I mean, it looks all right. Let's just go back to our good old friend, our regex 101 request URI. Let's dump those two values out. That's home. Why is it? Hang on a second. Did I just miswrote? Did I? No. I'm totally confused right now. Ah, okay. I was doing the wrong test. I was running the wrong test. Does it work now? Okay, good. So our matches array, remember, it's the output from our regex thing. We're going to unset the first matches because we're not interested in those. That's like the full match, and we're actually interested in like the subgroups of matches, right? Which is this one. If we would have multiple variables, it would actually. We're going to write a test for that. You'll see it in practice soon. Okay, so we have our matches, right? I'll also just take their values because we have to clean up the output from our regex call basically. We have our matches, array values like this, and now we can loop over them. So if we loop over our matches as index, like this, and actually, oh yeah. And we're going to create a value map. So the name of our variable with the corresponding matching value. So let's say value map is this, and then we'll do it like this. And we had our tokens here, which, if you remember, was this array. So the end result, in the end, we want an array with like name, brand, right? So we'll have to trim the curly brackets there and use it as the key. So basically trim tokens in the same index. That's why we did those array values, to have these two arrays in sync. We're going to trim them. We're going to trim curly brackets. Okay, and then we're going to return our value map. And now let's remove our DDs. I'm a professional programmer, as you can see. I use DD for debugging. Let's take a look. So we have our params here, and let's dump those out. And you can see we have an array, name, brand, and if we add other variables, it should in theory work as well. But first of all, if params is zero is null, that means we didn't have a matching URI, and we'll have to return a 404 basically. So that's return new response, generic response, status 404, and body. I should probably make that optional as well, right? Okay, we're almost there. I hope so, at least. I hope it works. I know it works, but there's a ton of extra code here, so I had to like convert it in my head to make it a little more easy to explain on stream. So if there are parameters, in this case, it means our route matched, and also that we have an array of variables that we should pass in here. And that should, I'm going to press B. Oh, wow. This is the perfect time actually to end, because I don't know if you can hear it, but my neighbors are doing construction work and they just started again. So so yeah, this is pretty cool. Let's go over some last comments. Rob asks, what's looking good so far? Thank you. I hope you're talking about the framework and not about me. What's the mission statement for Tempest? Why would you use it over, say, Laravel in the future? So first of all, this is an example project. This is for learning purposes. But on the other hand, like I said at the beginning of the stream as well, is that I might use it for some of my own like small things that I like to work on that aren't really used for real life projects. And I actually let's commit all of this for now. Commit hi. It doesn't really matter here. Let's go to my main branch. Uh-oh, I forgot to commit some things. Unversioned files. Here we go. Commit. And let's go to my main branch once again. Yeah. So when we're talking about mission statement, right, I wrote it like this. Tempest is an MVC microframework that gets out of your way. Its design philosophy is that developers should write as little framework-related code as possible so that they can focus on application code instead. And so some of the things I imagine here is, okay, for one, like route attributes. There is a lot more to say about them, but we'll have to dive into that in future live streams. But also like request classes, which you might know from Laravel. You know, request data is just mapped using properties. There are no other ways to pull in request data than to create a class for it and to have type properties with optional attributes that do extra validation, right? So these are request classes. That's one example. Views is another one where I applied like the view model pattern. If you follow my open source work, you know that I wrote a view model package for Laravel. And this basically has the same idea, but let's take a look, but like applies it by default. In case of views, there is a shorter version available as well, but I really think most of the time you'll want to create like custom views and like handle your view related data in those classes so that you have like auto completion in your view files. That's basically the whole goal of this, that you have proper static insights. There are a couple more things I'm still working on, but like I said, that's going to have to be for an upcoming live stream if you still want to watch those, of course. Let's take a look at here's a good question. Will you move tests near to production code? I assume you mean like moving the tests to like the source thing. I actually considered doing that, and then I realized I don't know how to configure my PHP unit XML in order to have that work. So it's just a matter of trying, of finding it out. But like, for example, what I like doing is I like being able to, this is a bad example because I renamed everything here. Yeah, like switch between test files and their source files, which PHP Storm does for you. And I'm not sure how that mapping works if you put files together. So that's something I still have to just check out, basically. What are your thoughts on Cake PHP? I used it once, I think, a long time ago, so I cannot speak for that. Might be good, I don't know. And I think that were all the questions. And basically that means we can conclude this live stream. I want to thank you for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you haven't yet. Leave a like as well. Maybe share this video, this live stream as well with your friends. Share your ideas for Tempest in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.